The Glass Aviary was built to burn liars alive. When they dragged Ilyra Ashwyn inside, the phoenixes were supposed to turn her bones to ash before the royal court. Instead, they burned the chains from her wrists and turned their fire on the Dragon King's crown. She entered barefoot, with iron around her wrists and soot-dark links dragging from her ankles across the white glass floor. Above her, the royal phoenixes perched among silver branches and rings of chained flame, their wings folded, their ember eyes fixed on the court below. For 200 years, those birds had judged treason. No accused liar had crossed the center ring and left untouched. Tonight, the court had brought them a forgotten princess. Most of the nobles remembered Ilyra only as a ruined name. The last Ashwyn girl, the quiet child sent to the abandoned West Wing after her mother died in the fire that ended House Ashwyn. Once, she had been born close enough to a throne for courtiers to bow. Now she carried coal, mended torn veils, and slept in rooms where rain came through the stone. The palace had not needed to kill her. It had done something crueler. It had taught everyone not to see her. "Lift her head," Lord Vaelor Ashgrave ordered. A guard caught Ilyra beneath the jaw and forced her face upward. Vaelor stood below the Dragon King's dais, in mourning black silver chains of office, heavy across his chest. He was the king's uncle, keeper of royal rights, and the man who had removed Ilyra's mother's name from the succession records after the blaze. He had called it mercy then. He called tonight justice. Dragon King Tharion Vale sat beneath a canopy of scaled gold and dark banners, one hand resting on a throne carved like folded wings. He was younger than the fear surrounding him, but harder than it. Black-haired, broad-shouldered, sharp-faced, he wore his crown as if it weighed nothing. Only the faint burn scar along his throat betrayed that fire had once marked him too. "State the charge," Tharion said. His voice cut cleanly through the aviary. Vaelor stepped forward. "Ilyra Ashwyn, former daughter of the burned Ashwyn line, stands accused of false blood, claimed theft of sacred feathers from the royal hatchery, and attempting to awaken loyalty in the phoenixes against the crown." A murmur moved through the galleries. Ilyra's fingers curled against her palms. She had stolen nothing. 3 nights ago, a stable boy had told her something was crying behind the sealed hatchery furnace. Ilyra had gone there, expecting a trapped chick. Instead, she found scorched feathers hidden beneath loose stone, and an old crest burned into the ash, the Ashwyn mark, broken through by the royal crown. Before she could understand what she had uncovered, soldiers came. By dawn, Vaelor had named her a traitor. By dusk, the court had agreed the Glass Aviary should judge her. "She has carried this fantasy since childhood," Vaelor said, his voice rich with sorrow he did not feel. "A girl raised among ashes begins to believe ashes are inheritance. That is not grief. That is danger." Ilyra looked at him. A memory rose through her before she could stop it. Smoke beneath a door. Her mother's hand pushing her under a stone table, men shouting for more oil. A voice saying, "If the Ashwings die, the throne is clean." Vaelor's seal ring glowed faintly at the memory, a thin line of white gold ash caught inside its black stone. His expression remained calm, but Ilyra saw his hand close. "She will enter the center ring," Vaelor declared. "If she speaks truth, the phoenixes will remain still. If she carries treason in her blood, the fire will choose her." The guards shoved her forward. The center of the aviary was marked by a silver circle inlaid beneath the glass. Above it, ceremonial flames floated in the air like burning chains. The heat should have driven her back. But when Ilyra crossed into the ring, the air changed. The phoenixes went silent, not sleeping silent, listening silent. A ripple passed through the court. Tharion leaned forward slightly. For the first time, Ilyra felt the full weight of his attention. It was not kindness. It was not belief. It was suspicion sharpened by something he did not understand, as if some buried instinct beneath his crown had stirred and warned him that this trial was not what Vaelor claimed. "Do you deny the charge?" the Dragon King asked. Ilyra had not expected him to speak to her. Her throat tightened. She had not spoken in 9 years. Not since the night after the fire, when smoke and terror closed around her voice and left only silence behind. The court had made that silence into proof of weakness. Vaelor had once called it convenient, so she answered in the only way she could. She lifted her chained hands and placed one over her heart. Then she shook her head once, not to deny herself, to deny the lie. The nearest phoenix opened its wings. Its feathers flashed from ember red to white gold. Another bird moved, then another. High above, the phoenixes began to circle, drawing a ring of fire over Ilyra's head. Gasps broke through the gallery. A noblewoman stumbled back. One priest whispered a prayer. Vaelor's calm cracked for half a breath before he buried it. "Command them," he said sharply to Tharion. "Make them finish the judgment." Tharion rose. The crown on his head caught the firelight and scattered it across the glass walls. "Burn falsehood," he commanded. The phoenixes screamed. Flame dropped from the air in 3 blinding arcs. Ilyra tried to scream when the fire fell, but only silence opened in her throat. The largest phoenix screamed for her. The court cried out, expecting her body to vanish beneath the fire. Instead, the flames struck her chains. Iron glowed white. Links snapped. Metal hissed and fell from her wrists in molten pieces across the glass floor. The shackles at her ankles split apart. The marks they had left on her skin shone briefly, not red with burns, but gold, as if something buried beneath her blood had answered a name no one had spoken in years. For one impossible heartbeat, no one moved. Then the phoenixes wheeled away from Ilyra and turned toward the throne. Tharion looked up. So did Vaelor. The largest phoenix descended in a burst of white gold fire. It stopped before the Dragon King, wings spread wide, its burning eyes reflected in the polished gold of his crown. The flame did not touch Tharion's face. It touched the crown. A single line of living fire raced around the Dragon King's coronation band before the entire court. Then the gold cracked. From inside the crown, Phoenix fire whispered one word: "Stolen." For a moment, even the phoenixes stopped moving. The word hung inside the Glass Aviary like a blade suspended over every crowned head in the realm. Stolen. It had not been shouted. It had not been spoken by any human mouth. It had slipped from the crack in Tharion Vale's crown as a thread of living fire, soft and terrible, old enough to make the glass walls tremble around it. Then the court broke. Nobles surged backward from the galleries. Priests clutched their moon-iron charms. Guards lifted their spears toward Ilyra, as if the burned chains at her feet were proof that she had somehow attacked the king from across the room. Above them, the phoenixes wheeled in restless circles, trailing white gold sparks that vanished before they touched the floor. Tharion did not move. He stood before his throne, with fire crawling through the fracture in his crown, his face carved still by a discipline so severe it looked almost inhuman. Only his eyes betrayed him. They had fixed on Ilyra with something sharper than suspicion now. Not belief. Not yet. But fear had entered the space between them. Not fear of her. Fear that she had survived a truth meant to stay buried. Vaelor recovered first. "Seize her!" The guards obeyed too quickly. 3 men rushed into the silver ring, but the largest phoenix dove low, struck the glass floor before Ilyra, and spread its wings in a wall of fire. The soldiers stumbled back with cries of pain. Their spear tips reddened, then softened, bending like wax. Ilyra stood frozen behind the flames. Her wrists were free. She could still feel where the chains had bitten her skin, but the pain had changed. Beneath the raw marks, something warm pulsed in time with the phoenix's wings. Not power, not yet. More like a memory inside her blood trying to wake and finding her too frightened to open the door. Tharion lifted one hand. The court fell silent by instinct. "Do not touch her," he said. Vaelor turned sharply. Your Majesty, I gave an order. The words were quiet. The whole aviary heard the dragon inside them. Vaelor bowed his head, but the bow came a breath late. Ilyra noticed. So did Tharion. The fire around the crown had faded to a thin line, but the crack remained, a jagged wound through royal gold. Tharion reached up and slowly removed it. A sound passed through the court. Horror, disbelief, hunger. A king did not bare his head before accusation. Not in public. Not before rival houses. Not before priests who measured legitimacy the way butchers weighed meat. But Tharion held the crown in his hand and looked down at the fracture. White gold ash glimmered inside it, the same color as the line caught in Vaelor's seal ring. Ilyra's breath caught. Vaelor saw her looking. His face remained grave, but his eyes hardened with warning. You see what she has done, he said, turning to the court. A forgotten girl steps into the aviary, and the crown burns. This is not innocence. This is blood. Treason. The Ashwings were executed for fire rebellion. Their magic has always corrupted flame against rightful rulers. Executed. The word struck Ilyra so hard she nearly swayed. They had always told her it was an accident. A palace fire. A tragic blaze. An old wing lost to careless lamps and dry banners. Her mother dead in smoke. Her family erased because grief made inheritance inconvenient. But Vaelor had said executed. He had said it easily, because the truth had lived in his mouth too long to stay hidden under pressure. Tharion's gaze moved to his uncle. What did you say? Vaelor still. The court stilled with him. I said the ash wings were extinguished, Your Majesty. No. Tharion's voice lowered. You said executed. For the first time, Vaelor looked old, only for a heartbeat. Then his sorrow returned, perfect and polished. A poor choice of word. The fire took them. The kingdom mourned them. Ilyra shook her head. The motion was small, but the largest phoenix answered with a low, burning cry. Tharion looked back at her. You remember? The question entered her like a knife turned slowly. She did not want to remember. Memory had never come cleanly. It came in smoke, in heat, in the taste of ash on her tongue, in her mother's hand over her mouth, not to silence her forever, but to save her from coughing while soldiers searched the burning room. Ilyra lifted trembling fingers to her throat. She pressed them there, then pointed toward Vaelor's ring. The court followed her gesture. Vaelor's hand curled into a fist. Tharion saw it. Open your hand, he said. Vaelor smiled faintly. Your Majesty, surely you will not let an accused traitor direct the throne. Open it. The command landed with enough force to make the phoenixes flare. Slowly, Vaelor opened his hand. The seal ring sat heavy on his finger, black stone set in dragon gold. To most, it looked like any noble mark of office. But under the phoenix light, a thin line of white gold ash glowed inside the stone. Tharion stared at it. Ilyra saw something shift behind his eyes. Calculation first, then memory, then anger restrained so tightly it seemed to drain warmth from the air. That ash, he said, was used in my coronation rite. Vaelor's jaw tightened. One of the priests made a strangled sound. Tharion turned his head slowly. Was it not? No one answered. That silence was worse than confession. The phoenixes began to circle faster. Ilyra felt the warmth beneath her burned wrists deepen. The birds were not protecting her because they loved her. They were responding to something older than affection. A debt, a wound, a law, written before Vaelor, before Tharion, before crowns learned to lie. The glass beneath her feet began to glow. Not beneath Tharion, not beneath the throne, beneath her. A pattern appeared in faint gold lines. Wings, ash, a broken crown, a tree burning from the roots upward and still blooming. The ashwing crest. The court saw it. A few nobles dropped to their knees without meaning to. Vaelor's voice cut through the panic. Do not be fools. Fire can be manipulated. Blood can be forged. She has spent years hidden in the palace for this moment. Hidden. Ilyra almost laughed, though no sound came. Hidden was a kind word for being forgotten. She had not hidden. She had been placed where no one with power had to look at her. She had scrubbed soot from hearths beneath portraits of ancestors who had stolen her name. She had watched feasts from doorways, carried wine to men who debated whether her mother had deserved mercy, and slept beneath a cracked window while the palace celebrated the anniversary of the coronation fire that had made Tharion king. She had not planned this. She had survived long enough for the fire to remember her. Tharion descended from the dais with the cracked crown in his hand. Each step brought him closer to the phoenix wall between them. The largest bird turned its head toward him and hissed flame through its beak. He stopped. For the first time, Ilyra understood that the royal phoenixes did not belong to him. Perhaps they never had. Tharion understood it too. His gaze moved from the bird to Ilyra's face. There was no softness there, no sudden devotion, only a dangerous, unwilling fascination, sharpened by the humiliation of a king discovering his own sacred beasts might judge him as harshly as they judged her. What are you? He asked. The court waited. Vaelor waited. The phoenixes waited. Ilyra wished she could give him an answer that would not kill her. Instead, she bent slowly and picked up one piece of her melted chain. The iron was cool now, blackened on one side, gold bright on the other, where the fire had touched it. She held it out toward him, not as surrender, as proof. Tharion stepped closer. The phoenix did not burn him. That startled everyone. It startled Ilyra most of all. He reached through the dying heat and took the broken link from her palm. Their fingers almost touched. Almost. A hair's breadth of space remained between them, but something passed through it anyway. A shock of heat, grief, and old smoke. Tharion's pupils narrowed. Ilyra's breath stopped. For half a second, she saw what he hid beneath crown and command. A boy standing in coronation flame while men cheered. A crown lowered onto his head, pain slicing across his throat. A dragon inside him roaring not in triumph but warning. Then the vision vanished. Tharion jerked back as if her silence had burned him. Vaelor saw the movement. His fear became decision. Kill the girl, he said. No, ceremone now. No sorrow, just the truth of him, sharp and bare. The guards hesitated. Vaelor raised his hand, and men in black scale armor appeared along the upper gallery, his private soldiers, not the king's. Crossbows aimed downward through the phoenix smoke. Tharion turned. His expression went deadly. Uncle. Vaelor did not bow this time. Forgive me, nephew. I have protected your throne since before you were old enough to understand what thrones cost. The first bolt flew. It was aimed at Ilyra's heart. The largest phoenix struck it from the air in a burst of white flame. The second bolt struck the glass beside her foot. The third was aimed at the Dragon King. Tharion moved too late. Ilyra saw the black-feathered shaft cut through the firelight toward the scar at his throat. She did not think. She only lunged. Her hand caught his sleeve. The moment her fingers closed around him, every phoenix in the aviary screamed. The moment Ilyra touched the Dragon King, the glass aviary shattered without breaking. Every wall became fire-lit memory. The court vanished behind a veil of white gold flame. The phoenixes screamed overhead, not in warning now, but in recognition, as if they had waited years for her hand to find the one man still wearing the lie. Tharion caught her wrist before she could pull away. His grip was iron, but not cruel. Shock had stripped the cold command from his face. "What did you do?" he demanded. Ilyra could not answer. The world answered for her. Fire spilled across the glass floor and rose between them in the shape of a night long buried. Ilyra saw the palace as it had been 9 years ago, not glittering and whole, but roaring with flame. The west wing burned red against a moonless sky. Soldiers dragged sealed oil jars through the corridors. A woman with Ilyra's eyes stood at the center of a chamber, her hands chained behind her back, her white dress already blackened with smoke. Queen Ilyra Ashwyn, Ilyra's mother. The court outside the vision gasped as they saw her too. Ilyra did not scream. She looked directly through the fire, as if she could see the daughter hidden beneath the stone table. "Remember," she whispered. Then Vaelor stepped into the memory. Younger, clean-shaven, wearing the same black seal ring. Beside him stood a boy no older than 17, crowned in trembling flame. Tharion, the real Tharion, went still. In the vision, the young prince was pale with pain, a fresh burn cutting across his throat as priests held him upright. He did not look triumphant. He looked drugged, half-conscious, his eyes unfocused, while the coronation fire rose around him too high, too violently, fed by something hidden beneath the floor. No, not something. Someone. Ashwing blood. The phoenixes screamed again, and the memory broke. The court returned in fragments, faces white, with horror, guards frozen beneath broken orders. Vaelor standing near the dais with his private soldiers above the gallery. The crossbow bolt meant for Tharion lay melted at Ilyra's feet. Tharion released her wrist as if her skin had burned him. But his gaze had changed. He no longer looked at her as a traitor. He looked at her as the last witness to a crime his crown had been built upon. Vaelor raised his hand. "Do you see it now? Ash. Wing witchcraft. She puts illusions in fire. She twists grief into treason." No one moved. Even his own soldiers hesitated. The largest phoenix descended to the broken crown in Tharion's hand. It lowered its beak and touched the cracked gold. A second word hissed from the flame. "Blood." Tharion's jaw tightened. Vaelor's face hardened. "Your Majesty, give me the girl." "No." The word was quiet, but it altered the room. Vaelor's eyes narrowed. "Then you choose her over the throne?" Tharion's fingers closed around the cracked crown. "I choose truth before I know what it costs." For the first time, something inside Ilyra's chest gave way. Not trust. She had no reason to trust a king who had worn her family's fire for 9 years. But the word struck a place in her that had been starved too long for anyone powerful to stop and ask what had been done. The court saw it too. A king standing bareheaded before the forgotten girl. A crown cracked in his hand. Phoenixes guarding the accused. Vaelor could not let that image survive. He lowered his hand. The black scale soldiers fired. Bolts rained from the upper gallery. Tharion moved first. He seized Ilyra by the waist and dragged her behind the throne's winged stone back as arrows struck the glass where she had stood. Phoenix fire erupted above them, burning half the bolts midair, but not all. One sliced across Tharion's shoulder. Another buried itself in the throne. Ilyra stumbled against him. For one violent second, they were too close. His breath struck her temple. His blood warmed the black fabric beneath her palm. His body shielded hers by instinct, though moments ago he had ordered the phoenixes to judge her. "Stay down," he said. She looked at him with disbelief. He saw it, and almost smiled, but pain cut the expression away. "Yes, I know." Another bolt struck the stone. Vaelor's voice thundered through the aviary. "The king is under blood. Enchantment. Kill the Ashwing girl and free him." The words turned fear into permission. Several royal guards wavered. Ilyra saw the danger before Tharion did. Vaelor was not merely attacking. He was rewriting the moment while it happened. If she lived, the crown was stolen. If she died, she became the witch who had bewitched a king. The phoenixes circled lower, but the glass roof trapped their fire. Vaelor's soldiers had chosen their position well, too high for blades, too spread out for a single bird to strike. Tharion glanced upward, calculating. Ilyra touched his wounded shoulder. He flinched. She did not heal him. She could not. but her fingers found the blood soaking through his coat, and the warmth beneath her wrists answered. The phoenixes shifted. Tharion looked down. "What are you doing?" Ilyra pressed his blood to the broken piece of chain still in her hand. Fire leaped through the metal. Not violent fire. Guided fire. The broken link turned white gold and sang. Every phoenix in the aviary snapped its head toward her. Ilyra lifted the link toward the upper gallery. For years, silence had been her prison. Tonight, it became command. The largest phoenix screamed. The others followed. Fire surged upward in a spiral, not toward the soldiers, but toward their weapons. Crossbows ignited. Bowstrings burned. Black scale armor glowed red-hot at the hands and shoulders until men cried out and dropped their aim. The attack collapsed without a single body turned to ash. Ilyra lowered the chain, trembling. She had not killed them. That mattered. Tharion saw that it mattered. Something unreadable passed across his face. Not softness, not yet, but respect. Sharp and unwilling. Then the glass floor beneath Ilyra cracked with golden light. A feather-shaped mark appeared under her bare feet. The phoenixes bowed. Not to Tharion. To her, the court fell silent. Vaelor stared as if the dead had risen. Tharion looked from the bowed phoenixes to Ilyra's face, and this time there was no suspicion left strong enough to hide the truth forming behind his eyes. "She is Ashwyn," one priest whispered. Vaelor drew a hidden blade from his sleeve. "If she is," he said, "then she should have burned with the rest of them." He lunged straight for Ilyra's heart. Vaelor's blade never reached her. Tharion caught his uncle's wrist in midair. The sound of bones stopping against royal strength cracked through the aviary louder than the phoenix's wings. Vaelor froze, his knife trembling inches from Ilyra's chest. For one heartbeat, all three of them stood locked together. The forgotten princess with fire-marked feet, the dragon king with a cracked crown in his hand, and the man who had buried a kingdom beneath coronation ash. Tharion's voice was almost calm. "You just confessed." Vaelor's eyes burned. "I protected you. You tried to murder her in front of me. I tried to save your throne from a dead bloodline's revenge." Ilyra stared at the blade. Its edge was black, not silver, poisoned, not meant for public execution, but quiet certainty. If it had entered her heart, the court would have called her death tragic. Vaelor would have called it necessary. Again, Tharion twisted his uncle's wrist. The knife fell. Before it touched the glass, a phoenix swept low and burned the blade to smoke. Vaelor hissed in pain but did not cry out. Pride held him upright, even as Tharion forced him to his knees. Around them, the court watched in stunned silence. No one knew which fear was safer anymore, the king's anger, the phoenix's judgment, or the girl everyone had forgotten. "Bind him," Tharion ordered. The royal guards hesitated. Vaelor smiled through his pain. "Careful, nephew. Half the men in this hall took their oaths under the same fire that crowned you. If my hands are dirty, so are theirs." That landed. Ilyra felt the room shift. Men who had looked ready to obey Tharion now looked at the floor. Priests lowered their eyes. Old noblewomen went pale beneath their jewels. Vaelor had not ruled alone. He had survived because too many powerful people had needed the Ashwings dead and the new crown clean. Tharion saw it too. His grip tightened until Vaelor's face strained. But killing his uncle now would not expose the full rot. It would only turn him into a king defending a woman. No one understood against a court terrified of its own guilt. Vaelor knew that. "You cannot burn the whole kingdom to warm one forgotten girl," he whispered. Ilyra flinched despite herself. Tharion looked at her. For the first time, the anger in his face faltered. He saw the way those words struck her, not because she was weak, but because they were familiar. She had been made small for years by the same logic, too costly to remember, too inconvenient to protect, too dangerous to name. Then the phoenixes above them began to descend. One by one they landed around the silver ring, not attacking, not screaming, but forming a burning circle. Their flames dimmed from white gold to deep ember red. The glass beneath Ilyra's feet glowed brighter, and the feather-shaped mark spread into a pattern of wings. A priest dropped to his knees. "An ashwing seal," he whispered. Vaelor snapped toward him. "Silence!" But the word had already escaped. Ashwing. For 9 years, Ilyra's name had been a ruin people stepped around. Now it moved through the court, like a spark through dry cloth. Tharion released Vaelor with a shove. "Take him below. Alive." This time, enough guards obeyed. 2 seized Vaelor's arms. He did not resist. That frightened Ilyra more than if he had fought. Men like Vaelor did not surrender unless they believed the next battlefield already belonged to them. As they dragged him away, his gaze found hers. "You think the phoenixes came to save you?" he said. "No, child. They came because your blood wakes graves. And graves always ask for payment." The words slid cold beneath her ribs. The largest phoenix turned its head toward Vaelor and screamed once. The guards hurried him from the aviary. Only then did Ilyra's knees weaken. Tharion reached for her. She stepped back. The movement was small, but the court saw it. So did he. His hand stopped in the air between them. A king unused to being refused. A man who had just shielded her, yet still wore the ashes of her dead. He lowered his hand slowly. "You are wounded," he said. Ilyra looked down at her wrists. The chains were gone, but the skin beneath them was raw. Around each burn, thin gold lines had appeared, delicate as veins of fire beneath glass. They did not hurt. That was the part that frightened her. The marks felt like something waking after a long sleep. Tharion followed her gaze. His expression darkened. "Can you speak?" She looked up sharply. The question had no cruelty in it. That made it worse. She shook her head. He studied her throat, and the burn scar along his own seemed to tighten. "Since the fire?" Ilyra did not answer at first. Then she nodded. The phoenixes lowered their heads. Tharion looked away, jaw hard. A strange silence settled. Not court silence. Not fear silence. Something heavier. The kind that comes after a lie cracks, and everyone realizes the truth beneath it is larger than the room. A priest approached cautiously, hands raised. "Your Majesty, the aviary must be sealed. If she is truly Ashwing, the old laws require—" "The old laws were written by the men who burned her house," Tharion said. The priest stopped. Ilyra stared at him. Again, not trust. But something in her chest shifted unwillingly. Then a horn sounded from below the palace. Once, twice. Ava alam. The court erupted into motion. Guards turned toward the terrace doors. Nobles began shouting over one another. Beyond the glass walls, far below the cliffside palace, red signal fires ignited along the outer walls one after another. Tharion strode to the edge of the aviary and looked down. A commander ran in, breathless, armor streaked with soot. "Your Majesty, the western gates have opened from inside." Tharion's face went cold. "Opened by whom?" The commander looked once at Ilyra, then away. "Lord Vaelor's men, and the banners outside are not ours." Another horn sounded, deeper this time. From the valley below came the answering roar of many wings. Not phoenixes, dragons. The court turned toward the night. Across the storm-dark sky, a rival army rose in formation. Black wings cutting through smoke and moonlight. Tharion looked back at Ilyra, and in his eyes she saw the trap finish closing. Vaelor had not needed to win inside the aviary. He had only needed to start a war while the king stood crownless beside the last Ashwing heir. The rival dragons did not descend at once. They circled. That was worse. Their black wings cut wide rings through the smoke-dark sky beyond the Glass Aviary, waiting above the valley like carrion birds that had learned patience from kings. Below, The western gates of Vaelor stood open, spilling torchlight onto the road where enemy banners advanced between ranks of armored riders. The sigil on those banners was not one Ilyra recognized, but the court did. Fear named it before anyone spoke. House Mournfell, a noble whispered. Tharion's hand tightened around the cracked crown. House Mournfell had been the Dragon Kingdom's oldest rival, exiled beyond the Basalt Mountains after the last succession war. If they had returned now, through a gate opened from inside the palace, then Vaelor's betrayal was larger than murder. Larger than the Ashwing fire. He had not only buried one bloodline, he had prepared to sell the throne the moment its lie began to fail. The commander dropped to one knee. "Your Majesty, the lower guard is divided. Some still await your command. Others claim Lord Vaelor issued emergency authority before the trial." "On what grounds?" The commander's eyes flicked toward Ilyra again. Tharion saw it. "So say it," he ordered. The man swallowed. "That you were bloodbound by Ashwing witchcraft and no longer fit to command." A hiss moved through the court. Ilyra stepped back, as if the words had physical weight. There it was. The cage Vaelor had built around her before she knew she was inside it. If the phoenixes killed her, justice. If they spared her, witchcraft. If Tharion protected her, enchantment. Every path led to her death, unless someone broke the board entirely. Tharion turned toward the gathered nobles. No crown rested on his head now, only the burn scar at his throat and the firelight cutting across his face. "Any man who believes I cannot command may leave this aviary and join the gates." No one moved. "Good," he said. "Then listen carefully. House Mournfell is at our walls because my uncle opened the door. Not because this girl survived a trial." Someone near the back said, "She is Ashwing." Tharion's gaze found him. "And I am wearing what was stolen from her dead." That silenced them more deeply than anger could have. Ilyra stared at him. He had not apologized. Not with words. A king's pride stood too near him for that. But confession, spoken before the court, carried its own dangerous weight. It placed a crack, not only in his crown, but in the story that had kept her invisible. The largest phoenix dropped beside her, folding its wings with a rush of heat. Ilyra flinched, but the bird only lowered its head until its burning beak hovered near her wrists. Its eyes were not gentle. They were ancient, merciless, grieving. It touched one golden mark on her skin. The world tilted. A vision struck her so hard she nearly fell. A hidden corridor beneath the palace, Vaelor walking with a mournful envoy, a black feathered contract sealed in dragon blood, and a map marked with the western gate, the aviary, and one word written over her name. "Be." Ilyra gasped soundlessly. Tharion caught the movement. "What did you see?" She seized a shard of blackened chain from the floor and dragged its sharp end across the white glass. Her hand trembled, but the line burned gold where she wrote, "Vaelor used me to open war." The court stared. Tharion read it once. His expression became terrifyingly still. A second line forced itself into her mind, and she wrote before fear could stop her. "Mournfell wants the phoenixes." At that, the bird screamed. The sound shook the aviary. Tharion looked toward the circling dragons outside. Understanding came fast. The aviary is not the target. It is the weapon. The commander paled. "If Mournfell captures the royal phoenixes, they can burn every blood oath in the kingdom," Tharion finished. Vaelor's plan unfolded in the silence. "Accuse Ilyra. Force the phoenixes to reveal themselves," Brand Tharion enchanted. "Open the western gate. Let Mournfell seize the palace while the court was divided. Then blame the fall of Vaelor on the last Ashwing heir. A neat betrayal. A beautiful lie." Tharion turned to the commander. "Seal the lower stair. Send loyal guards to the west gate. No one enters this aviary." The commander hesitated. "And the court?" Tharion looked at the nobles. "The court will decide whether it prefers truth with danger or a comfortable lie with mournful chains around its throat. No one dared answer. Then the glass roof above them exploded inward, not from fire, from claws. A black dragon crashed through the upper frame, shattering crystal across the galleries. Nobles screamed and scattered. As the beast landed on the outer ring, its scales dark as wet stone, its eyes burning green. A rider in bone armor stood between its wings, holding a hooked spear wrapped in ashcloth. The royal phoenixes rose at once. But before they could strike, the rider hurled the spear into the center ring. It did not aim for Ilyra. It struck the silver circle beneath her feet. The aviary screamed. The phoenixes faltered mid-air as black veins spread through the glass floor, binding the fire lines under a net of shadow. One by one, the birds dropped lower, wings beating hard, their flames dimming from white gold to wounded red. Tharion swore beneath his breath. The rider laughed. Lord Vaelor sends his regards. Ilyra stepped toward the spear. Tharion caught her arm. No. She looked at the phoenixes struggling above them, then at the floor where the ash-wing crest flickered beneath the spreading dark. She understood before he did. The spear had not been made to kill her. It had been made to make the phoenixes choose. If she did nothing, they would be chained. If she touched it, the court would see whatever blood Vaelor had tried to bury. Tharion's grip tightened. Ilyra? It was the first time he had said her name. The sound struck her harder than the war outside. For 9 years, her name had lived in rooms no one entered. Now the Dragon King spoke it like a command and a plea at once. She pulled free. The black veins reached the largest phoenix's wings. It screamed in pain. Ilyra knelt before the spear and wrapped both hands around the ash-cloth shaft. Fire tore through her palms. This time, her silence broke, not as a voice, as wings. The sound that came from Ilyra was not human. It burst through the Glass Aviary as a storm of wings. White gold fire erupted from her palms and raced up the ashcloth spear, not burning her flesh, but burning through something inside her that had been sealed for 9 years. The black veins crawling across the glass floor recoiled. The trapped phoenixes screamed back, their flames flaring brighter as if her silence had become a door, and something ancient had finally forced it open. The mournful rider stopped laughing. Tharion stepped toward her, then froze. Ilyra's shadow had changed. It no longer lay beneath her in a trembling shape of a frightened girl. It stretched across the glass, as 2 vast wings of fire and ash, spreading wider with every heartbeat. Behind her, in the burning reflection beneath the floor, another woman appeared for one flickering breath. Queen Ilyra Ashwyn. Her mother's face was made of smoke and flame, but her eyes were clear. Not dead eyes, waiting eyes. The phoenixes bowed again, lower this time. The ash spear cracked. The rider shouted, "Kill her!" The black dragon lunged. Tharion moved like a blade drawn from darkness. He seized a fallen spear from one of the guards and hurled it with brutal force. The weapon struck the dragon's eye ridge, not deep enough to kill, but hard enough to turn its attack aside. Its claws tore through a silver branch instead of Ilyra's back. Glass rained down. Nobles screamed. The phoenixes rose in a burning spiral around her, shielding without touching. Ilyra gripped the spear harder. The pain became memory. She saw the night of the ash-wing fire again, but clearer now. Not scattered smoke, not broken fragments. Her mother chained before the coronation pit, Vaelor holding the black seal ring over a bowl of ash, priests chanting that borrowed fire could crown a borrowed king if no true ash-wing lived to call it false. Then young Tharion appeared in the vision, dragged forward by men twice his size. His face was gray with poison. His eyes were open, but empty. He had not chosen the fire. He had been fed to it. The truth struck Ilyra so sharply her knees nearly failed. Tharion had worn the lie, but he had not lit it. The spear split down the center. Black smoke poured from it, twisting into Vaelor's voice. Ash. Wing blood opens fire. Dragon blood commands it. Bind the birds. Break the girl. Crown the second king. Second king. Tharion heard it. So did the court. A new horror moved through the aviary. Vaelor had not meant to give Vaerhold to Mournfall as ally. He had meant to use Mournfall as blade, capture the phoenixes, and crown himself from the ashes of both houses. The rider snarled, and raised a curved horn to his mouth. Before he could blow it, the largest phoenix struck. The bird did not burn his body. It burned the horn from his hand, then the leather straps binding him to the dragon saddle. He fell hard onto the glass floor, armor cracking beneath him. Tharion crossed the space in 3 strides and put a blade to his throat. "Where is Vaelor?" he demanded. The rider spat blood. "Below the east furnace, where your first crown was made." The words pulled every phoenix toward the lower palace. Ilyra felt it too. A deep, aching call beneath the stone. Not one bird, not one flame. Something buried, something chained under the palace. Since the night her mother died, her hands slipped from the broken spear. The black veins shattered. The phoenixes surged free. The glass aviary filled with heat so bright the court fell to its knees, not from loyalty but survival. Ilyra staggered backward, dizzy, her palms smoking, her throat burning as if a voice had tried to return and found the path still broken. Tharion caught her before she fell. This time, she did not pull away immediately. His arm was solid around her waist, his breath rough with battle, his shoulder bleeding where the bolt had torn through cloth. Up close, he no longer looked like a distant king carved from black stone. He looked like a man standing in the ruins of everything he had believed about himself. "I did not know," he said. The words were low, meant only for her. Ilyra looked at him. Part of her wanted to hate him anyway. It would have been easier, cleaner. He had sat on the throne built from her mother's death. He had worn the crown that cracked under Phoenix truth. He had let his court forget her, until forgetting became another kind of burial. But she had seen him in the fire, a poisoned boy, a stolen crown, a dragon forced to inherit blood debt before he understood the price. She touched 2 fingers to her throat, then shook her head once. Not forgiveness, not yet, only truth. "You did not know." Tharion understood enough for pain to cross his face. Then the lower palace shook. A column of black fire erupted beyond the aviary terrace, rising from somewhere deep beneath the eastern wing. The phoenixes screamed toward it, furious and afraid. In the heart of the black flame, a second crown formed in the air larger than Tharion's, jagged, made of ash, bone, and burning gold. Vaelor's voice rolled up from below the palace. "Let the old fire judge us all." The court turned in terror. Tharion released Ilyra slowly and looked toward the eastern furnace. "He is beginning a coronation." The largest phoenix landed before Ilyra and lowered its burning head, not bowing now, offering. Ilyra stared at the creature's back, at the flames flowing like living feathers along its wings. Tharion followed her gaze. "No." The phoenix looked at him and screamed. Ilyra understood. Vaelor had gone to the place where her mother died, the place where Tharion's crown had been stolen, the place where the remaining Ashwing fire was still chained, and only Ashwing blood could enter without burning. She stepped toward the phoenix. Tharion caught her wrist. "If you go down there, he will use you." Ilyra looked at the black crown forming above the palace. Then she looked back at him. For 9 years, she had survived by staying unseen. Tonight, the whole kingdom was finally looking at her. She placed her burned hand over his and gently removed it. Then the phoenix lowered one flaming wing. Ilyra climbed onto its back. The aviary doors blew open before her, and together they plunged into the black fire below. The phoenix fell like a star. Wind tore at Ilyra's hair as the creature plunged from the shattered aviary toward the eastern wing, its wings cutting through smoke and black fire. Below, the palace no longer looked like a palace. It looked like a wound opened in the mountain. Flames poured from the old furnace vents in twisting columns, not red or gold, but dark as spilled ink, with bones of white light moving inside them. The phoenix did not slow. Ilyra gripped the burning feathers beneath her hands and expected pain. None came. The fire recognized her skin. That frightened her more than being burned would have. They dove through a broken arch into the lower palace. Stone walls flashed past. Old murals blistered under the heat. The air tasted of ash, iron, and ancient grief. Behind her, distant roars shook the sky as Tharion's guards fought mournful dragons above the western gate. But the sound faded when the phoenix carried her into the buried halls. Here, the palace was older. No banners, no polished glass, no court. Only black stone and furnaces carved deep into the cliff, where kings once came to bind fire to crowns. The phoenix landed before a sealed door twice the height of a man. Its surface was marked with melted gold and handprints burned into the stone. Ilyra slid down from the bird's back, trembling. The door had no handle, only a crest, ash wing, broken through by the dragon crown. Ilyra reached toward it, but the moment her fingers neared the stone, the scars around her wrists flared. The marks left by the chains brightened into gold lines, spreading over her hands like veins of fire. From behind the door came a woman's voice, her mother's voice. Ilyra. Her knees weakened. The phoenix bowed its head. Above them, footsteps thundered down the stair. Tharion appeared through smoke with blood on his shoulder and a sword in his hand. 2 loyal guards followed, but stopped when the heat forced them back. Tharion did not stop. The black fire licked toward him, recoiled, then struck the scar at his throat like a remembered insult. He staggered, but kept walking. Ilyra turned sharply and raised a hand. No. He read the warning in her face. You think I will let you face him alone? She shook her head, fierce now. Not alone. Not you. The fire did not want him here. Or perhaps it wanted him too much. Tharion glanced at the sealed door. His jaw tightened. This is where they crowned me. Ilyra looked at him. His eyes had gone distant, drawn backward into a memory he had spent years surviving without understanding. I remember heat. Priests chanting. Vaelor telling me not to fight. Then pain. His hand rose to the scar at his throat. After that, nothing clearly. Only cheers. The door pulsed. Inside, Vaelor's voice rose in ritual cadence. By stolen ash and dragon blood, by crown unmade and crown reborn. Tharion's expression turned to ice. He has my blood. Ilyra understood too late. The bolt that had cut his shoulder in the aviary had not been only an attack. It had been harvest. Vaelor had taken what he needed from both bloodlines, the Dragon King's blood and the last Ashwing heir's awakening. The sealed door cracked open. Heat blasted outward. Ilyra stumbled, but Tharion caught her elbow and pulled her behind him. The phoenix screamed. Inside the furnace chamber, Vaelor stood before a pit of black fire, his hands lifted beneath the forming crown of ash and bone. Around him, mournful priests knelt in a circle, their robes burning at the edges without being consumed. At the center of the pit, something writhed beneath chains. Not flame, a phoenix. Older than the ones above. Larger. Its wings had been nailed open with dragon gold spikes. Its body reduced to ember and bone, yet still alive, still burning, still forced to feed the crown taking shape above Vaelor's head. Ilyra's silent breath broke apart in her chest. Her mother's voice whispered from the walls. They used my blood to bind her. Vaelor turned. He smiled as if he had expected them at exactly this moment. There she is, he said. The little ash key. Tharion lifted his sword. Step away from the fire. Vaelor laughed softly. You still think this is about fire? Poor boy. It was always about permission. He drew a small vial from his sleeve. Dark red blood glowed inside it. Tharion's blood. Vaelor poured it into the pit. The chained ancient phoenix shrieked. The black crown above Vaelor sank lower, its jagged points catching flame. Tharion lunged. A wall of black fire threw him backward. Ilyra reached for him, but the heat between them surged like a living warning. The chamber had divided itself. Dragon blood on one side, ash, wing blood on the other. Vaelor had made the ritual so Tharion could witness, but not stop it. "You were never meant to rule long," Vaelor said to him. "Only long enough to keep the throne warm while the old houses died, believing you legitimate." Tharion rose slowly, rage darkening every line of his face. Vaelor looked at Ilyra. "And you were meant to stay forgotten. That was your only mercy." The words struck. But this time, they did not shrink her. Behind Vaelor, the chained phoenix lifted its skull-like head. Its ember eyes found Ilyra, child of ash. The words entered her blood, not her ears. Her blood. Ilyra stepped into the chamber. Tharion shouted her name, but the black fire closed between them. Vaelor's smile widened. "Yes. Come closer. The crown needs a true heir's witness before it can rise." Ilyra walked toward the pit. Her burned wrists glowed brighter. The phoenix at her side followed, trembling with rage. Around the chamber, mournful priests began chanting louder, mistaking her approach for surrender. But Ilyra was not looking at Vaelor. She was looking at the spikes in the ancient phoenix's wings. 9 years of silence pressed inside her throat. 9 years of being unseen. 9 years of carrying a name people had tried to bury. She lifted her hands. The chained phoenix lowered its head, and Ilyra finally understood why her voice had vanished the night her mother died. It had not been stolen. It had been hidden inside the first fire that survived. Vaelor saw the change too late. Ilyra touched the nearest dragon gold spike. The ancient phoenix screamed, and Ilyra screamed with it. Ilyra's scream tore through 9 years of silence. It was not beautiful. It was raw, broken, and bright with pain. The sound of a girl who had swallowed fire as a child and carried it in her throat until the kingdom forgot she had ever been meant to speak. The furnace chamber shook around it. Black flames recoiled from the walls. The mournful priests staggered out of rhythm, their chant splintering as if her voice had cut the ritual's spine. The dragon gold spike beneath her hand cracked. So did the next, and the next. The ancient phoenix lifted its nailed wings. Vaelor's smile vanished. "No," he said. It was the first honest word Ilyra had ever heard from him. The phoenix at her side rose into the air, wings blazing white gold. Above the pit, the unfinished crown of ash and bone trembled, caught between Vaelor's command and the older fire waking beneath him. Tharion stood beyond the wall of black flame, one hand pressed to the invisible barrier, watching her with a look that no court had ever seen on his face. Not command, not suspicion, fear for her. "Ilyra!" he shouted. Her name reached her through the roar. She turned toward him for one heartbeat. He was bleeding, crownless, trapped on the wrong side of the fire his own blood had helped awaken. But he had not looked away. Not when she screamed. Not when the ancient phoenix answered. Not when the truth of his stolen reign stood burning between them. That mattered. It should not have. But it did. Vaelor seized the ritual knife from the altar and slashed his palm open over the pit. "By royal blood and conquest flame, I command." The ancient phoenix snapped its head toward him. Its eyes burned through the smoke. Vaelor Felteril. Ilyra understood then what he did not. The phoenixes had never obeyed the throne. They had endured it. Chained beneath rights, fed with stolen blood, forced to crown men who called theft destiny. But obedience and patience were not the same thing. The final spike split under Ilyra's hand. The ancient phoenix ripped one wing free. Fire exploded outward. Mournful priests screamed as their robes ignited not their bodies, only the oaths sewn into the cloth. Black thread burned away from them like worms of smoke. One by one they collapsed. Suddenly old, suddenly afraid, stripped of borrowed power. Vaelor backed toward the pit, still clutching the knife. "You cannot free her," he snarled. "Her fire holds the kingdom together." Ilyra looked at the ancient phoenix. The creature's body was ruin and glory. Bone showing through ember, wings torn by centuries of binding. Yet, when it lowered its head toward her, there was no weakness in it. Only grief. Recognition. "Comment? Daughter of the last ash. Choose." Ilyra's voice trembled when she answered. "I choose. No more crowns made from graves." The words were hoarse, barely human, but they were hers. Across the chamber, Tharion went utterly still. Vaelor lunged. Not at Ilyra, at the ancient phoenix's heart. Tharion broke through the fire. He did it with no magic, no crown, no command, only rage and will. Black flame tore across his coat and burned into his scar, but he drove through it with a roar that sounded more dragon than man. He struck Vaelor before the knife could fall, slamming him into the altar hard enough to crack the stone. Vaelor's blade skidded across the floor. Ilyra staggered toward them, but the ancient phoenix spread its damaged wing, holding her back. This was not hers alone. Tharion dragged Vaelor upright by the front of his robes. "You used my blood." Vaelor laughed through blood on his teeth. "I made you king. You made me your mask. I saved this realm from a dead house and a child too weak to protect her own name." Tharion's fist struck him. The sound echoed through the furnace chamber. Vaelor fell to one knee. For a moment, Ilyra thought it was over. Then Vaelor smiled. The unfinished crown of ash and bone dropped from the air and clamped around his head. Black fire surged up his body. The chamber screamed. Vaelor rose slowly, no longer merely a man. Ash moved beneath his skin. His eyes burned white. Around his shoulders, shadows shaped themselves into broken wings. "You want truth?" His voice came from everywhere at once. "Then let the kingdom see what ashwing fire really creates." He lifted one hand. Above them, through the shattered roof of the furnace shaft, the glass aviary answered with a violent crack. The court was still there. The nobles, the priests, the loyal guards, all of them trapped beneath glass as black fire began climbing toward them. Tharion looked upward in horror. Vaelor had turned the ritual outward. If the ancient phoenix was freed completely, the backlash would burn through every oath, every crown, every living witness tied to the false coronation. Truth would come, but so would ruin. Ilyra felt the choice sharpen inside her. Free the phoenix and watch the palace burn. Leave it chained and let Vaelor own the fire forever. Then Tharion turned to her, not as a king commanding a subject, as a man placing his life in the hands of the woman his kingdom had erased. "What do you need?" he asked. Ilyra looked at the ancient phoenix, then at the cracked crown in Tharion's hand, still gripped despite fire and blood. Her voice came again, rough but clear enough to change the air. "Break it." Tharion looked down at the crown in his hand. For 9 years, that band of gold had been the shape of his life. Men had knelt to it. Armies had marched beneath it. Blood oaths had been sworn in its shadow. Every law, every execution, every victory, every silence in the court had carried the weight of that crown. Now a girl his kingdom had forgotten was asking him to destroy it. Above them, the black fire climbed higher through the furnace shaft, racing toward the glass aviary. The court screamed somewhere far overhead. Phoenixes battered the burning air. Vaelor stood beneath the ash-bone crown, laughing as the false coronation fire fed him strength. Tharion met Ilyra's eyes. There was no time for apology, only choice. He raised the cracked crown and brought it down against the edge of the stone altar. Gold split. The furnace chamber convulsed. Vaelor screamed as if the blow had struck his own skull. Black fire tore away from his shoulders. The ash-bone crown above him flickered, then sank lower, trying to anchor itself more deeply into his flesh. Fool, Vaelor snarled. That crown holds your right to rule. Tharion struck it again. The crack widened. I will not rule by stolen fire. The words rang through the chamber. Ilyra felt them enter the ancient phoenix like breath. The chained creature lifted its broken wings. One spike remained buried near its heart, glowing with dragon gold and old blood. It was the last anchor, the deepest one, the one no phoenix could burn away, because it had been sealed with both Ashwing sacrifice and dragon command. Ilyra stepped toward it. Tharion saw. No, she did not stop. Vaelor's head snapped toward her. Touch that, and every lie in this palace burns with you. Ilyra's new voice scraped through pain. Good. She closed her hand around the final spike. The chamber vanished into memory. She saw her mother again, not dying, but choosing. Queen Ilyra Ashwyn stood before the ancient phoenix with soldiers at every door, and Vaelor's ring raised over the fire. The priests had meant to use all Ashwing blood to crown Tharion. Ilyra had understood what they were doing before the spell was complete, so she had hidden one thing from them, her daughter's voice. Not stolen, not broken. Hidden inside Phoenix fire so Vaelor could never use Ilyra's spoken blood in a coronation rite. Ilyra looked through the memory at her. Live long enough to choose better than we were allowed to. The vision shattered. Ilyra pulled. The final spike came free. The ancient phoenix rose. Not with grace, with fury. White gold fire blasted through the furnace chamber, swallowing the black flames before they could reach the aviary. The walls shook. The pit split open. Mournful priests crawled away, stripped of every oath they had stolen. Vaelor staggered backward, the ash-bone crown burning into his brow. Tharion struck the royal crown one last time. It broke in half. The sound was small. The consequence was not. Every oath made beneath the false coronation fire snapped. Across the palace, bells screamed without hands. In the aviary above, nobles fell to their knees as old vows tore loose from their blood. Guards who had served Vaelor dropped their weapons, staring at their palms as black sigils burned away. The western gates groaned shut under phoenix flame, trapping mournful forces outside the inner walls. Vaelor fell. For the first time, he looked afraid, not of death, of being powerless. The ancient phoenix landed between him and Ilyra, its ruined body burning brighter with every breath. It lowered its beak toward his face. Vaelor crawled backward. I preserved the realm. Ilyra walked past the phoenix. Tharion moved with her, close enough to shield, not close enough to command. She stood over Vaelor and looked at the man who had turned her family into fuel, her childhood into silence, and her survival into an accusation. He looked smaller on the ground. That did not heal anything. Speak, Vaelor spat. Curse me, burn me, become what they feared. Ilyra's throat ached. For years, she had imagined having a voice again. She had thought it would return with rage, with accusation, with all the words she had swallowed until they became stone inside her chest. But when she finally spoke, her voice was quiet. You are not worth my fire. Vaelor's face twisted. The ancient phoenix opened its wings, not to burn him, to reveal him. White gold flame washed over Vaelor without consuming his skin. Instead, it burned away every glamour, every oath mark, every hidden pact stitched into his blood. Images rose around him for the court above to see. Vaelor sealing the hatchery. Vaelor ordering oil poured beneath the west wing. Vaelor pressing Tharion's poisoned hand into coronation flame. Vaelor making treaty with Mournfall beneath the eastern furnace. Every lie became visible. Every excuse lost its body. Above, the aviary fell silent. Then one voice cried out, Traitor. Another followed, Murderer. Then the whole court took up the words. Vaelor clapped his hands over his ears, but truth did not need his permission to be heard. The ash-bone crown cracked across his head. Black fire leaked from it like blood. He lunged suddenly. not toward Ilyra, but toward the broken halves of Tharion's crown. Tharion stepped in his path. Vaelor stopped, panting, wild-eyed. Without a crown, you are nothing. Tharion looked at the shattered gold on the floor, then at Ilyra, then at the ancient phoenix. No, he said. Without that crown, I may finally become king. The ancient phoenix screamed. The furnace roof burst open. White gold fire rushed upward, carrying Ilyra, Tharion, Vaelor, and the truth into the Glass Aviary before the entire court. They rose through fire, not falling, not flying, but carried by the ancient phoenix's final judgment. The furnace chamber vanished beneath them. White gold flame wrapped around Ilyra's body without burning, around Tharion's wounded shoulder without consuming, around Vaelor's struggling form like chains made from the truth he had spent 9 years burying. Then the Glass Aviary opened above them. The court saw everything. Ilyra landed first in the center ring where her chains had melted. Tharion came down beside her, crownless, blood-streaked, holding the broken halves of his coronation band. Vaelor fell to his knees before them. The ash-bone crown cracked across his brow, black fire leaking from it in thin, dying streams. No one spoke. The nobles who had leaned forward to watch Ilyra burn now stood frozen beneath shattered glass. Priests stared at the ancient phoenix rising behind her like a son born from grief. Guards lowered their weapons. Even the rival Mournfall dragons beyond the walls pulled back from the white gold blaze pouring over the palace. Vaelor tried to rise. The phoenixes screamed. He collapsed again. Tharion stepped forward, but Ilyra moved first. That stopped him. It stopped the court, too. For 9 years she had been the girl in the West Wing, the quiet burden, the forgotten daughter, the surviving inconvenience no one wanted to name. Now she crossed the white glass floor, with fire marks glowing around her wrists and the ash-wing crest burning beneath every step. Vaelor looked up at her with hatred sharpened by fear. "You think this makes you queen?" Ilyra's throat burned. Her voice was still new, still wounded, but it belonged to her. "No," she said. "It makes you seen." The ancient phoenix spread its wings. Fire spilled across the aviary, not wild, not cruel, but precise as memory. It rose around Vaelor and opened the past for every soul in the court. They saw the West Wing burning. They saw oil poured beneath nursery doors. They saw Ilyra Ashwyn chained before the coronation pit. They saw young Tharion drugged and bleeding, forced into borrowed fire. They saw Vaelor press his seal ring into ash and command the records changed before dawn. No one could look away. No one could pretend. When the vision ended, the silence that followed was not confusion. It was shame. The oldest priest dropped to his knees first. House Ashwing was murdered. A noblewoman covered her mouth and wept. A captain of the guard tore the black oath band from his wrist and threw it onto the floor. Others followed. One by one, Vaelor's hidden loyalties burned away in streaks of black smoke, leaving men pale and shaking beneath the weight of their own choices. Vaelor laughed once, broken and bitter. "You will tear the realm apart for a dead house." Tharion looked at him. "No. You tore it apart to keep one alive falsely." He lifted the broken crown. Every eye followed the movement. For one breath, Ilyra thought he might try to mend it. Kings clung to symbols. Thrones taught men to mistake gold for survival. Instead, Tharion threw both halves at Vaelor's feet. "I renounce the stolen fire." The aviary trembled. The phoenixes bowed their heads not to Tharion as king, but to the choice he had made. Then he turned to the court. "Until the throne is judged clean, no crown will sit on my head. Every oath sworn under the false fire is void. Every house that aided Vaelor will answer. Every record burned from House Ashwing will be restored." Murmurs rose, fearful and stunned. Then Tharion looked at Ilyra. "And the last Ashwing heir will not be hidden again." The words struck her more deeply than any public honor could have. She had thought recognition would feel like triumph. It did not. It felt like grief, finally given room to breathe. Ilyra looked toward the ancient phoenix. Its flames were dimming now. Freedom had cost it what centuries of chains had not taken. It had burned too long in darkness. Even reborn fire could grow tired. She stepped toward it. The creature lowered its great head until its ember brow touched hers. "Daughter of Ash," it whispered through her blood. "Do not build another cage from what they broke." Tears blurred the firelight. Ilyra placed her palm against its beak. The ancient phoenix dissolved into white gold sparks. They did not vanish. They rose through the broken roof, scattered over the palace, and fell upon every sealed door, every altered ledger, every hidden grave beneath Vaelor. Across the kingdom, bells began to ring. Not warning bells, funeral bells. Names erased from history burned briefly in the air, one after another, until the night itself seemed to remember the dead. Vaelor screamed as the ashbone crown crumbled from his head, not because it killed him, because it left him alive, a prisoner, beneath the truth. Tharion ordered him taken below, not to the furnace, not to fire, but to a cell of plain stone where no crown, no ritual, and no borrowed flame could answer him again. When the guards dragged Vaelor away, he did not look at Tharion. He looked at Ilyra. She did not lower her eyes. Afterward, the court remained kneeling, some out of fear, some out of guilt, a few, perhaps, out of reverence. Ilyra wanted none of it. Reverence was another cage if given too quickly. So she walked out of the silver ring and toward the shattered edge of the aviary, where dawn had begun to pale beyond smoke and dragon wings. Tharion followed, but stopped beside her instead of standing before her. For a while, neither spoke. Below, the western gates held. Mournful banners retreated into mist. Leaderless now, that Vaelor's bargain had burned in front of the court. Above, the surviving phoenixes circled the palace once, then flew toward the eastern horizon, free for the first time in generations. "I cannot undo what was done," Tharion said. Ilyra looked at him. His face held no crown's arrogance now, only exhaustion, blood, and a grief he had not yet learned how to carry. "No," she said. The word hurt, but it was true. He accepted it. "I can answer for what I wore." She studied him then. The king who had been made from her family's fire, the boy who had been poisoned into power, the man who had broken his crown when she asked. Not forgiven, not absolved, but changed. "That is a beginning," she said. Something moved through his face, pain, respect, and a dangerous tenderness he did not reach for yet. He seemed to understand that wanting her forgiveness did not make him worthy of it, that protecting her once did not erase years of silence. That devotion, if it ever came, would have to be built without a throne between them. So he only bowed his head. Not to the court, to her. Behind them, the phoenixes cried from the brightening sky. "This time," Ilyra answered. Her voice was rough, quiet, alive, and every flame in the broken aviary bent toward her.